Hello again, I've created this as a special video to let you know that there's some challenging content coming in the next couple of videos. We find people find the next couple of videos a little bit more challenging than we have been doing, and that's because we're introducing some new concepts. And when you find new concepts, it might not make sense just yet. But what I want you to know is that as you go through this course, we go over those concepts over and over and over, and by the time you finish the course, it will all make sense and will all fit together, even if the first time you see something doesn't quite click in your mind. So keep going and don't give up. Make sure you watch all of the videos through. There's often an answer to your question in the very next video. But if you have a question at the time, throw them in the question section or on our forum and have a look through the existing questions against this lecture, because there's a very good chance someone's asked it already and there's a really good answer from one of our teaching assistants or myself already for that question. And to get you prepared for the next couple of lectures, I want to go through a couple of points to give you a little bit of theory in this lecture, just so you've got a little bit more knowledge before you get in there and we actually do it in the code. So I've got my little scribbly pencil here. What I want to talk about first of all is just once again to remind you about variables and methods. So variable is a container. It's like a box. It's where we store things. And you'll see in the next video, we start talking about a variable which is our starting state, and also a variable which we just call state. What state are we in? It might be we're in the first part of our story, the second part of our story, we're at the end of our story. So we're using the word state to say, where are you in our story? So at this point in time, we might be defining the state as, we'll call it B, state B. B might be, you're standing in a corridor and it's very windy. That's state B. And we have all of the explanation, we have all the words stored in our scriptable object. And any point in time, we might say, wait, it's no longer state B. State now equals state C. And by doing that, we can update what state we're in, because we just want to be in one state at a time. And when we start, we need to say, what's the starting state? So that our program knows where do we start from. So we would create a variable which we will call starting state. And then at some point, we're going to say state equals starting state. And that's a way of saying, here is starting state that we're going to define somewhere. This is our very first thing we want to do. We know what that is. There it is right there. And at some point, we're going to say the state we're in now, the variable that we're calling state, that we're keeping track of where we are right now, it's going to equal starting state. And what's starting state? Well, it's that thing we told it, this is the starting state. So I'll talk about this more detail in the next lecture, but I just wanted to remind you about variables. It's just a way of us keeping track of what the value is at the moment, or what the reference is at the moment. In other words, what are we referring to? So delete that, and then the other main thing that we use a lot throughout all our scripts is a method, or otherwise known as a function. Now, I want to give you a quick analogy here so that you understand a little bit more, a couple of concepts to do with methods. So say we've got two people. We've got one guy here, very handsome. We'll call him Rick, for example. And another guy here, not quite as handsome. He's okay. We'll call him, I don't know, Ben, for example. And we have a situation where Rick is going to ask Ben to do something. And in this instance, we're using Rick to represent a method call, or a method that's got a list of actions in it, or code in it. And Rick is going to say, for example, Ben, please turn on the TV. So our method might be called simply turn on TV, parentheses, and then we have our curly braces, and in there we have the action that it takes. Maybe there's some code. This is my commenting out, my pseudocode in here. It's something to do with how to go and switch on the TV. So that's a method, and I'm using that, comparing it back to analogy in real life. It's someone saying, turn on the TV. That's an action. It's a do something for me, please. That's our method. Now, we have a concept as well. Let me use a different color for this because it's important. Return. So we can return a value. What does that mean? Well, when we call the method, so when Rick says, Ben, please turn on the TV, that's the action, then we can return something so Ben can give something back to Rick. So when we call our method, in this case it's Rick saying, Ben, please turn on the TV, you can ask for some information back from Ben, and that's the return. So he might say, hey, Ben, turn on the TV and let me know what the football score is at the moment. That's going to return something back to Rick. So Rick's asking Ben, turn on the TV, and then Ben is returning back to Rick the score. It might be 5-2. And so our method turn on TV can also have a structure for saying, how do I give that back? What sort of information do I want to get back? What type of information? Do I want it to be an integer, like a 5 is an integer? Do I want it to be a string, for example, a sentence? So we have a way of asking back, that's returning back. And in the next couple of lectures, we're going to be asking a string to return because we want all of the words back. We want our story to come back. So when our method is saying, do this particular thing, and by the way, give me back what the story should be, that's the flow of information. And then the final concept I'll give to you now before we get into this and do these in the lectures, just very quickly, is the notion of public versus private. I talk about this a lot more in the next lecture. The main thing to know here at the very high level is if something is a private method, so we're talking about methods here at the moment, something's a private method that only the things that are near it or within the same script, same class, can call that method. So using my Rick and Ben example here, if Ben and Rick are in the same room, then if Rick calls a private method, Ben will hear it. It's all cool. However, if Rick and Ben are in different rooms and Rick calls a private method, then Ben won't hear it or won't be able to do that. I would need to make it a public method. I'd need to be able to pick up a megaphone and yell it across the entire house so he can hear it from whatever room he's in. That's a real simplification of that analogy, but it's a way of getting you thinking about the fact that private can only be done in the same script or the same area of the code, and public can be done across all of our project, anywhere in the project. Okay, so that's just a quick rundown on some of the concepts we're going to be covering in the next video. We're going to go through them again. I'm going to explain them again. Hopefully, if you hear them explained 2 or 3 different ways, it'll really help you out to have it stick. If it doesn't stick, don't worry about it. It will make sense as things go along. Just follow along as best you can, ask questions, and keep pushing through the course. And I'll see you in the next video.